While Far Cry 6's previous DLCs may have put past villains from the series into the spotlight, the latest expansion returns to familiar territory in a different way, by totally jumping the shark. Dropping you back in the shoes of Danny Rojas, Lost Between Worlds is all about an alien entity called Fae that crash lands in Yara, creating a multitude of time rifts and portals to alternate dimensions. What ensues is a web of interconnected semi-roguelite levels that you're free to play through in any order you want. It's a genuinely fun way to bring an end to Danny's story that I found myself happily plowing through all 6 hours of in a single day, even if it did essentially feel like a watered-down version of the main game. Similar to how Far Cry 3 brought us the Neon Drips Blood Dragon, Far Cry 4 gave us a fantastical Valley of Yetis, and Far Cry 5 dropped us off on Mars, Lost Between Worlds isn't afraid to cap off Far Cry 6 by getting a bit weird. Fae's arrival scattered 5 shards into alternate dimensions, and it needs your help to find those shards and reassemble its ship to get off the planet. Thankfully, the mere process of shard collecting should save the world from ending as well. Convenient, right? The best way I found to have fun with Lost Between Worlds was to just immediately give into a suspension of disbelief. There's no real explanation for an alien craft crashing into Yara, and the sooner I realized that, it didn't matter, the sooner I was having fun blasting away at the DLC's colorful crystalline enemies. Collecting shards means venturing through portals into destabilized twists on the real world called rifts. Each rift looks like a cool, bizarro world version of Yara and is essentially a self-contained level with a unique quality that poses a new challenge. For example, one rift suffers from periodic lightning strikes, while another features a slowly descending spiral of doom from the clouds, and yet another is totally pitch black other than the pink glow of the precious shard in your hands. While venturing through rifts, you can also collect sparkling glint fragments. When you die, you can spend glint to revive at the start of that rift if you have enough. Otherwise, death means you'll have to restart your entire run back at the beginning of the rift web with Fae. That's a welcome failsafe for anybody not as into a more traditional roguelike formula, but I didn't actually die very often throughout Lost Between Worlds and rolled credits with a whopping 1,000 glint saved up. Once you reach the end of a rift, you must pick between 2 portals to advance further. The portals are simply gateways to your choice of 2 other random rifts, and which ones they lead to stay the same for the whole run. That provides a fun sense of variety to mix things up the first time you go through a new portal, but also means you'll know where it connects if you have to backtrack through a rift later on. Your map even shows you which portal connects to which rift once it's unlocked, so you don't have to guess once you've visited each rift at least once. After every shard you collect, Fae grants you a new piece of gear to speed your rift travel along. For example, after you bring back the first shard, she will give you a C4 style bomb that can be used to open up shortcuts on subsequent rift visits.
Away from the portals.
Other gadgets include a grappling hook for scaling walls to skip sections, and even a key for opening previously locked doors that usually contain loot. This is a great progression structure because it dramatically reduces repetition if you're not required to play through entire rifts all over again every time you visit. Outside of that handful of permanent gear upgrades, any weapons and gadgets you've collected along the way will be lost whenever you collect a shard or die trying. Since there are only a handful of weapons to find, I like this feature because it forces you to adapt to whatever is available rather than picking a favorite gun and never switching. In turn, that helps each rift remain entertaining even when you visit it for a second or third time. Since all of the rifts crisscross and interconnect in various ways, you don't even have to visit the same rift more than once or twice if you don't want to. For example, I absolutely hated this rift, which makes you swim bubble to bubble while trying not to drown. It was plain annoying and tedious like most water levels, so I just avoided it on all of my other shard collecting journeys. I vastly prefer this style of premeditated variety over the procedural generation or totally random rift selection that Ubisoft could have opted for here. Letting me play each scenario in the order I preferred is much better. The other major twist Lost Between Worlds introduces is chromatic combat. All of the enemies in this DLC are crystallized humanoid creatures that are either purely blue or purely red. In order to damage one, you must shoot them with their matching color by changing your own bullet color on the fly. Although for some odd reason the default key binding on PC for switching colors is L, which was obnoxiously inconvenient until I swapped it to my mouse's thumb button. Unfortunately, this color changing idea doesn't really add much since enemies seem to always spawn in the same places each time you visit a rift, and swapping is as simple as a button press. Other than amplifying the otherworldly visuals on display, it's mostly pointless. That's especially true since there are only a handful of actual enemy types between your standard assault rifle users, snipers, melee rushers, and shielded machine gunners. I'd have preferred better encounter design or a more creative enemy AI over adding a superfluous color changing layer to combat. Lost Between Worlds' web of interweaving levels may be more restrictive than Far Cry 6's usual open world, but this wild new structure totally works. What Ubisoft lost in vast level design, they made up for with a creative alternative dimension concept that encourages replaying levels, unlocking new paths, and mixing up your approach. There isn't much to the story this time around, and the addition of color-coded enemies doesn't do much to shake up its otherwise untouched combat, but the interesting premise and engaging gameplay loop at least helped this add-on outrank the previous villain-focused DLCs. For more on Far Cry 6, check out our review of the original game or watch the first 15 minutes of Lost Between Worlds. And for everything else, stay tuned to IGN.
Huh. Is there a weapon in that crate?